Hey there, little buddies, and welcome to yet another edition of the Boob Tube Buddies podcast. In this episode, we discuss Chapter 2 of the FX original series, Legion. I'm Mothman, and I'm joined by the romance of my mind, Natty Light. What's up, man?
Hey, Natty Light. I've been looking for a nickname, and that I'm not happy with.
Yeah, no?
I'm not.
You're not happy with, like, the cheapest of beers and then the light form of that?
I've been told Nate Dogg and Natty Light now, and I'm not into any nickname that my name could possibly come up. I'll come up with something, and I'll present it to everybody, and we'll see if you guys appreciate it.
Know what I think would be a good one?
What?
Basically saying nasty, but with a lisp. So, nasty. Because it's basically like Nathan, but with the TY on the end. What up, nasty?
Just sounds really dumb. Yeah, but you know what describes me, though? It describes me, though, because I am nasty.
You are nasty. Anyway, hey, y'all, we have a website, www.boobtubebuddies.com. We also are on all the social medias. That's right, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit. I think that's basically it. We also have a YouTube channel. We're obviously on iTunes. That's probably how you're hearing us now. If you aren't hearing us on iTunes, maybe go subscribe, drop us a review. We would love it. It's how people find us. Anyway, let's get into it, right?
Yeah, man, I'm excited.
Well, then kick us off.
All right, I will. So this week, it answered a lot of the questions that we had last week, which was like, what is the direction, the visual direction that the show is going to take? So I'm really excited to sort of discuss, like, with the threads that we were left in season or in episode 1, how this sort of picked up and left, or took those on. Do we want to read our tweets to sum up the episode?
That probably would be a good way to start it off. So,
because I want to talk about some of the things in my tweet.
Perfect. Well, then let's start with our first segment. Summon it up in a tweet.
Oh yeah, we're summon it up, so summon it up. Summon it up, oh yeah, we're summon it up. Oh yeah, we're summon it up, so summon it up. Summon it up and up.
Tweet.
Two lovebirds who can't have sex. The femme fatale Professor X. An MRI, the eye and shit. This show is cray and just won't quit.
What?
Come on, right?
Yeah, that was actually good. Do the last sentence again for me.
It's just an MRI, the eye and shit. This show is cray and just won't quit.
My God, that was good. So you basically touched on everything mine was trying to touch on, and I kept not having enough space, and then deleting and going back, and I just ended up with bullshit. But here it is.
All right.
The school for gifted youngsters begins to teach David. Meanwhile, the eye sets a trap, and daddy issues emerge. Say goodbye to the psych ward.
Your tweets are like an HBO, like a little description, or like a Netflix description for each episode. Like, you could get hired doing like, hey, we just have this season of Daredevil, but we need you for each episode to sum up what's happening in the episode without giving anything away in a sentence or two. You're really good at that.
Thank you. Yeah, if they, what kind of job would that be? You would have to just have, if that was an actual job, you would have to, think of those are 140 characters and there's 10 episodes in a season. You'd have to do every show on Earth to make a living out of
that. Depending on how much they pay per sentence that you write?
Yeah, because, you think of like a 500,000 word article, like, normally they pay by the 1,000 words or something like that.
Sure.
Anyway, that...
Well, you're good at it.
...was summing it up in a tweet.
So within my tweet, there were a couple things that I just wanted to talk about because I like that this... I was expecting this show, they said it's like a superhero show, but without the superhero, right? It doesn't fall into normal superhero confines of what you'd expect out of. I've been watching a lot of Daredevil, so I'm like, okay, this is what a traditional superhero show, TV show, is like, a serialized retelling of a superhero tale. And Legion certainly is nothing like that. Like, it's far more esoteric, right? But it's not shying away from the fact that this is an X-Men universe. Like, we're talking about mutants, like, excuse me, the word hasn't been said, but the word evolution has. And so we've identified that we're in the X-Men universe. And I didn't know that we were going to go to this sort of like X-Men style school, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's super cool.
Yeah, I didn't either. So yeah, the Charles Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters, you basically get the version of that, but with the female version of the trainer. So you now are getting into, I mean, you're right. It doesn't follow typical like superhero origin, but that's the thing about like Marvel. Really, all superheroes at this point. There are the more classic like superhero style stories, but then there were also characters like Legion and even Deadpool and all these other that are just so not the norm that they have enough in common with the superhero universe and those types of tropes, but it's also like, very unique. I was more interested, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing that they went to the school, but I was more interested to see how they would play out and make a show interesting that took place in a mental ward, and immediately they're broken out of the mental ward, so there's already like an action set piece, and now they're at a school training. It's a little more formulated than I actually expected it to be.
I would agree with that. I think that we're seeing that a lot of the story of the mental ward, I don't think that we've left there entirely. I certainly think we're going to find out more about that, but it's going to happen through memory. So I think that's sort of the groundwork that they're laying is we don't want to completely take you out of this environment. The story of the show is the story of this guy's David's past and his upbringing and people telling him that he's crazy, him believing that he's crazy, and how that led him to who he is now, and then honing his powers, in a non-crazy way and coming to terms with that. And so I think that we're still going to get that story. We're just going to be seeing it through memory. But I agree. It is a little bit more like I was saying, like a little bit more superhero-y than I expected. Now I like though, one of my favorite parts of seeing the School for Gifted Youngsters? Is that the name of Xavier's school? Yeah,
that's what they always called in the comics. I don't know what the school's called, but yeah.
Well, yeah. So, but like even watching Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, I like seeing that environment because I like getting to see all of the different types of mutants.
Sure.
So, and exploring what their powers are and seeing what they can do. And we got a little bit of that this episode as well. And I like that a lot. I like exploring more in detail what the different types of, because like you mentioned last week, at this point with X-Men, most of the mutations have been explored at this point, either through comic or through film. Like they've kind of come up with most of what they're going to be able to come up with what's a superpower essentially.
Yeah. So I think it becomes more interesting when it's not just about what the superpower is, but it's more like what the show is and what are the ramifications for having to live with that superpower. Right. Yep. So in the X-Men comics, Sid's character reminds me a lot of Rogue because Rogue can't touch someone without draining their power.
Exactly.
She won't do the switch places thing, but she
it's still physical contact.
Yeah. So there's like this, big scene in the comics, and I think they even had it on the X-Men cartoon maybe at one point where like Rogue kisses someone, and like it just goes poorly. And I know they had that in one of the scenes
in the
movie as well.
Yeah.
So it's just, that's kind of interesting because for him, obviously, the ramifications are he never even knew he had powers. It's so much closer correlated to a mental illness that's what he's always assumed he's had.
And he's still having trouble believing that too. And so that's where you're talking about like exploring mental illness and exploring how that impacts somebody. How would it be if your entire life you were told to believe that you're crazy, only to find out that you're not? You still can't isolate that and disconnect yourself from that thought in your head. So no matter how many times she says, he mentions I'm crazy, and she's like, that's not the narrative anymore. Remember, like we've changed this. You have to remember that you're not, and we need to move past that. But he can't do that in his head because on some level, I think he actually is dealing with mental illness after being told it so many times and not knowing how to hone all the voices in his head and everything that happens around him. Like it sort of led him to this form of insanity. So I think that they're definitely exploring that. You don't want to let go of this idea that he's still kind of got a mental illness.
No, with him, it's almost like chicken or the egg. How could he not be mentally ill at this point? Because just having the powers and never having anyone explain that's what they are until now, he's basically always questioning reality, right? So it's no different than any other type of trauma. If you've gone through war or were sexually assaulted or this, that, and the other, the fact that you've moved on and kind of worked through it doesn't change that it
Yeah.
happened, you know? So he's now 20 plus or 30 years into a life of thinking he's ill. He's going to continue to flash back to that and question the fact that even say season 3, like he's super good with his powers and can control them. I would imagine there's still going to be moments of weakness and questioning reality, and or he'll take on the persona of someone that maybe is actually crazy, and then that kind of triggers memories.
That's kind of happening with Aubrey Plaza's character, because are we in this episode implying that he knew Aubrey Plaza's character before the hospital, like that they actually physically knew each other and were friends before going to the hospital, or was that a vision that he was having?
I don't know. What I was kind of starting to think is what I think you hypothesized last week, which is the fat guy with yellow eyes and her are just different personalities, like that he has taken on, and he just
the weird part
interacts
is
with them.
The part with the vapor and the part where they're with the little, like, what was it, like a frog, that's like spitting out the vapor and they're trying to like do drugs, and the part where she's got
cool.
Yeah, I know. That was kind of cool looking.
Yeah.
And the part where she's trying to sell the range for drugs, that was all in his timeline, that was pre-mental hospital, because he's going to a psychiatrist and stuff, right?
Well, yeah, there seems to be multiple things. So there's the current timeline, which is him at the school, him going through the MRI and doing all that stuff. There's then also the therapy sessions, which I liked. And then in the therapy sessions, he says vapor, but it's like a flash in the pan. And the therapist asks what that means. He's like, oh, nothing. And at the same time, we're watching in modern day them doing the memory work. So Patani, or whatever his name is, can trigger these memories, and they're watching. And in the therapy session, he has a memory, and you realize that the kitchen scene from last episode, where everything's going over, was like him kind of getting violent after a breakup. Yeah. And what's interesting is how they play with that type of stuff, right? Because he says, "What was that I saw for a second?" He's like, "I don't know, nothing." Like he's even having these flashes in his memory.
Did you think that was a glitch in like the way that you were watching it?
What do you mean?
When you saw that first? So the first time they show him, first of all, the psychiatry scene, the actual like therapy scene, his acting in that scene, I just wanted to note that it's incredible. Like, I fell in love with this dude as an actor just from watching him in that scene. He's just sitting there sort of like internally conflicted as to what he should be saying and dealing with the voices in his head, but also kind of trying to respond to the therapist. And the performance is super cool. But the first time we see that scene, it's not during memory work. They don't interrupt it and go, wait, what's going on here?
They're not in there at all yet. They're just showing us
we just
one of
watch
the
it
scenes.
play out.
Yeah.
Exactly. But the skip still happens in the scene. So they're talking, and in this random scene of the show, like the jump happens where it's like there's a little bit of time that's missing. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Like, did the file I downloaded, is there like a glitch in this? And I mean, no. So later it's proven in the middle of it, when they are there doing memory work, the glitch still happens, and they point it out as a narrative point. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's weird. Okay, because I caught it earlier in the show, but I'm like, something's wrong.
And you're wondering, like, why is it? What's the significance of it? So is there a moment we're going to find about later where he kind of has an episode and uses his powers in that memory?
Right.
Like, when it actually played out. And that's what's kind of erased from his memory because, it doesn't fit his narrative that he's crazy, that he would have powers and actually, be able to pull anything off. So anyway, you have the timeline of current day. You have the stuff happening during the therapy sessions, and then you also have the Aubrey Plaza stuff, which, I mean, outside of him mentioning in therapy that he says something about vapor, but I almost also think they're kind of trying to play with like the circular function of time, and that it's not linear. So you're also not 100% sure that it's earlier, it's before the mental hospital, is it memories during. I mean, like, I think they're still intentionally being pretty vague, Yeah,
that makes sense. Because there's also time between when he gets out of the mental hospital and goes to live with his sister, and when he goes to this school to get the training. Like, there is a little bit of time while what's the name of the government agency that's trying to find him? I don't remember what they call it.
Yeah, I don't either.
There's a word for it. We'll remember next week. But where they're trying to find him and seek him out. So things may have happened in that interim as well. But But yeah, so, and I love very much that the show is not afraid to switch the format and try crazy things like just skipping the middle of a scene altogether. Or the show this episode started out in an aspect ratio change again.
Yeah.
Because it was like a chase sequence. It was kind of like a spy sequence where this character, the Eye, is walking through the woods searching for him. Mm-hmm. And so you get that sort of like action sequence aspect ratio.
The Eye is the character you were asking was like,
yes,
was real.
I thought he was in his head. I thought he was in his head. Okay. Sitting in the corner the whole time, the first episode, just sort of watching and never acknowledged by the interrogator in episode 1. He's just never acknowledged. And so I'm like, is David just imagining, is this one of his crazy characters that sits in the corner, like taunting him that he keeps looking over at? And they're like, what are you looking at? Sure. No, it's a real dude who works for this government agency that's seeking out and either harnessing or killing mutants. It seems to be what their goal is.
Well, at this point, why don't we go ahead and throw... we're going to start doing interviews on the show, which we've done. Absolutely. If you listen to Black Mirror and some of our other podcasts, it's something we've definitely done. So we went on the subreddit and have all kinds of great people that are going to be participating. So we're going to throw to that an audible ad, and then we'll be right back with the rest of the show. Hey there, little buddies. We have our first interview for the Legion show, and we're very excited about it. From the Legion subreddit, we have met Juliet. How you doing?
I'm great, thank you.
So, what did you think of the show so far? Let's just get that out of the way. You've watched the new episode that aired yesterday. How are you feeling about it?
I really, really love it. I'm so into it. So far, it's everything that I hoped it would be.
Yeah, I watched the second one this morning as well. Really enjoying it. It's a little all over the place, but they just do a great job of, I don't know, making you feel like you almost have the power as he does, because you're not really sure what's really happening and you're kind of constantly questioning reality.
Yeah, exactly. It's really chaotic, but I kind of like that chaos because it does make you feel like you're in David's head.
Yes, yeah, I would agree. I would also like to point out that we've been doing interviews for a few months now, but I believe you are our first international interview.
Ooh,
yeah,
exciting.
I know, right? We had to figure out time zones and everything. There's a 5-hour difference.
Mm-hmm.
So what had you interested in the show to begin with? Like, do you just like FX shows? Are you a superhero fan?
I'm definitely a superhero fan, although I haven't read the comics, or many comics really, although I'm definitely open to reading them. But mainly Dan Stevens. I really like Dan Stevens. I didn't watch Downton Abbey, but I loved The Guest. I don't know if you saw The Guest, that film, but he was so badass in it. I really loved it, and it was kind of one of those performances that makes you want to seek him out and find out what stuff he'll be in the future. And I read the premise of this show, and I love Marvel anyway, and it seemed really like right up my street, and especially with Dan Stevens in it, I just had to watch it.
Sure. So The Guest was a phenomenal film, and what's like, I think you might be the first person I've talked to that's actually seen it.
Yeah? Oh my god.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember it being big over here, but I'm just like a big kind of over the top like gore and horror and action, fan, and it got recommended to me, but I didn't even... Dan Stevens, is that Holly? Is that the main character?
It is, yeah, that's him.
That's crazy. I'm looking. I just pulled it up. I would never have thought that was him in The Guest, because he's such a different character in this. And I knew he was in Downton Abbey, which I have not seen, but
no.
In The Guest, he's kind of like this muscular, like badass.
Yeah, and then in Legion, he's kind of seems like skinny and like vulnerable. It's so funny, just kind of the comparison between the two characters.
Yeah. I wonder. I haven't seen much other stuff in them. I mean, certain characters and actors can definitely pull that off. Like Christian Bale's one of those that can go from like Batman to The Machinist, where looks like he's about to fall over and die.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes.
So what other shows? Like, if you had to pick some of your favorite shows out there, just to kind of give a feel for, your taste, what would they be?
I really, really love Hannibal, and Sherlock is one of my favorite TV shows ever. I wrote my dissertation on Sherlock. I love it that much.
Oh, really? You did a college paper on Sherlock. Okay.
Exactly, yeah. 10,000 words on Sherlock. Um, and at the moment, I'm wearing my "It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia" T-shirt, and I
Okay,
believe is that an FX show as well?
that is an FX show.
Yeah, I guess I'm a fan of FX at the moment. Then.
Yeah, that was. I mean, if my memory serves, I think Always Sunny was kind of the show that put FX on the map. It was a pretty new network when that started to come out. I was in high school. It's crazy to think that Always Sunny has been out for like 12
It's
years
a
now.
12 series, yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, I remember the first season, I hadn't heard about it, and then I think near the end of the first season, someone at school told me about how great it was, and so I decided to watch it. And the first episode I saw was, I think it's called Charlie Gets Molested.
Yeah,
And,
so that's it, yeah.
and it had
I think
a
that's the 13th episode of the first series. That's my favorite episode of the first series.
yeah, and it's got I don't know. Did you ever see a show called Saved by the Bell?
No, I hear it like mentioned in like American stuff, but I never saw it.
Yeah, it's I mean, kind of in hindsight, if you watch it, it's a terrible '90s show just about these kids in high school, but the principal is Mr. Belding, and I don't think I've ever seen him in anything else other than Saved by the Bell and
Yeah.
that one episode of Always Sunny.
Oh my God, so obviously I didn't get the reference. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, yeah. So it's kind of weird seeing him in like a school setting where it's a little darker and molestation and all that other good stuff. Um, so where do you think this show is gonna like go? So the first episode, you're in the insane asylum, which or I thought that was gonna actually stay a lot longer. I thought most of the season was gonna be there, but now he's basically at an Xavier style school for training. What do you think the trajectory is going to be of the rest of the season?
I really don't know, but that really excites me because it just seems kind of um, it's not taking the traditional trajectory. Um,
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those shows that I guess I just don't know what to expect, which I'm absolutely happy with. And I think if they keep the pace going where it's continually interesting, it's a little bizarre. Yeah, so what do you think's going on with that weird fat dude with yellow eyes? I even saw on Reddit there's a screen capture from the first episode, and him as a baby, David as a baby, has an action figure that even looks like him.
oh, I saw that too. That's so mad. I feel I've heard that he's one of two characters from the comics, although people are unsure about that. But at the moment, for me, I feel like he's probably some kind of manifestation of David's fear and someone that David's going to have to confront at some point in the future. Or I don't know. I guess if it was really like a toy that David played with when he was young, I guess it is just David using kind of the visual of that toy to represent something, some dark thing, within him.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you see a little more of his childhood stuff in this episode, and you're not sure what's real and what's not. I mean, I guess what I'm thinking at this point is it's just one of the many personalities he's going to take with him, kind of like
Yeah.
Audrey Plaza's character, who we was in the mental institution with him, but now she's outside of the mental institution, doing drugs with him. All those things. I think you're going to actually start to see a cast of characters that you just have them kind of see in these flashbacks, and they have to just be these different personalities he's taken on.
Yeah, I really like that idea. I'm so glad that Aubrey Plaza's character is going to continue to be in the show and
Yeah.
like a weird companion for him.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. Before we let you go, how do people get in touch? Obviously, you're on the subreddit, and you'll be continuing to discuss it with us there, but are you on any of the social medias? Do you have anything creative you'd like to let the audiences know about?
I have Instagram. I'm Hypno Bloom, like hypnosis, but hypno and bloom like a flower.
Okay.
I do embroidery, and I'd potentially like to open an Etsy shop and, take requests to do fan-related embroidery art if anyone's interested in that.
Oh, awesome. That's really cool. Well, thank you so much, Juliet, for being on the show. We really appreciate it. We will probably be doing interviews for most of the season, but like obviously any input you have, questions, this, that, and the other, theories, Continue to hit us up on Twitter or the subreddit, and we'll definitely shout you out in future shows.
Yay!
Cool. Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye.
Hey there, little buddies. Does the state of the world leave you in despair and make you want to leave this world only to try out another one? Well, you don't have to wait 50 years for Elon Musk to colonize Mars. You can step into another world right now with Audible. That's right. With Audible, you can go to any foreign world you want with classic authors such as H.G. Wells, Philip K. Dick, George Orwell, and many, many more. And just when you finish one book and become depressed and have to confront the harsh reality that you live in, well, that's when you realize there's 180,000 more titles to choose from. So go to audibletrial.com/BoobTubeBuddies to try it free for 30 days. You'll be doing yourself a favor, and I guarantee you won't regret it. Nor will your fragile, fragile psyche. All right, and we are back. A big thank you to Juliet for being our first interview on the show. I think it's the only person I've met that's actually seen the Guest movie, and I once again, I said it in the interview, but I was blown away that was this main character, because they have him so frail and kind of scrawny. I mean, I think he's just wearing baggier clothes in this, whereas he's kind of like a total badass in that movie.
Right. I never saw it. I saw Your Next, which I know they made before The Guest, but I never saw The Guest. And I did think that was interesting when you look at like the poster for The Guest. You can see he's like, wow, that's a different looking guy altogether. But yeah, he's super good. He's really impressing me so far in this.
Yeah, no, he is a very good actor. Definitely go see The Guest. I think you can rent it on Amazon or whatever. But it's a very good movie that I haven't thought about. But Your Next is also a lot of fun. Anyway, so as far as the show goes, the other stuff that I thought was really interesting was the other flashbacks, not just the therapy session, but the stuff as a kid with his father. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So that made me think. I mean, immediately you think, okay, you know that in traditional canon, Magneto is his father, right?
No, Professor X.
Oh, Professor X is his father.
Yes.
Oh, why did I think Magneto? Who's Magneto's? Oh, Quicksilver.
Yeah, Quicksilver
and Scarlet Witch are Magneto's kids.
Yes.
Professor X is his father. Gotcha. Okay. So is that, from your perspective, is that what they're implying here, the beginning of that? And tying those two things together? Because you never see his face.
You don't see his face. It does make him look like a, dark-haired man, which I guess Professor X is at some point. But you can't see his face. And then there's all the weirdness with whatever the bedtime story was.
Yeah, which they don't dive into. He's obviously asked about it, but then he says he doesn't want to talk about it. But it's like this very dark, murderous kids book that's being read. And then later, when he's in the room again, that book falls off of the bookshelf and lands on the floor. Like there's some importance to this book. And whether in his actual childhood his dad really read him that book, or if he's sort of piecemealing memories together and creating a memory, is hard to know. Yeah, because this guy's power is that he can actually go back into your real memories, right?
Yes,
but they can be changed, because he says don't go touch your sister. Like you can, but if you do, the memory changes.
Yeah, so it's possible that one, he just has all kinds of weird memory issues because of the personalities he's taken on, right?
Yep.
It is interesting. They have all this stuff with the father. They never show his face. Very intentionally, they show it kind of like overshadowed, but they also have the scene where like they're driving out to his favorite spot, which is in front of the stars, and they're sitting on the car, and he hears the stars talking to him. I was almost wondering if that was, here's the stars talking to him. He thought everyone heard that. I almost wonder, because they talk about the X-Men, it's almost like puberty is when your powers hit.
Yeah, when that starts to happen. Yeah.
I'm wondering if that's kind of the moment where it happens, and that's why all these negative things are there, because he gets his powers. He doesn't know their powers. They're not.
Yep.
It's not like claws, right? It's something in his mind, and so that's where the.
Yeah, it's kind of like it represents like this darkest moment in his childhood. Right, like when everything comes crashing and he's just confused about everything that's going on in his head. And so it really could have, I guess it could have wound up messing with his memory or recollection of what happened back then. Mm-hmm. like the show as a whole is definitely, it's asking more questions than it's answering right now. Obviously, it would do that in its first 2 episodes.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm struggling to figure out exactly what that's implying about what really happened in his childhood. They lived out in the middle of nowhere, you know.
Sure.
Is what he's saying. The other thing I thought is that if they're not implying that Professor X is his father here, but they want to imply that on the grander whole, maybe he had an adopted mother and father. So this guy isn't Professor X, but it's, you know, his like father or stepfather or adopted father or something like that. I don't really know where they're going or where this fits into the grander canon of this character, but it was interesting to see.
Yeah, and I do absolutely love one of the scenes where the murderous character is real.
Where the what?
Like the murderous character that you saw drawn in the book, you actually see a real version of it.
Oh, yeah.
For like a split second, like a suit.
Which is terrifying.
Like a prosthetic, like cartoon character. Just
well, even
so
the
cool.
drawing of it reminded me. Did you see Babadook?
Yeah, Babadook. Yeah, it's very.
Yes.
Are you familiar with Edward Gorey?
No.
So you should do a quick Google search. But Edward Gorey is like the original, kind of like original cute gothic artist.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And Tim Burton, very inspired by Edward Gorey.
Gotcha. Okay.
But it's always pen work, like a lot of cross hatching, and this is just, you know, I don't know. There's something very eerie about it, but it's also kind of cute.
Yeah, no, that's exactly the tone that I got, is like this sort of dark gothic illustration. Yeah. But it is also paired with very incredibly adult darkness in the words, because it's about murder and killing and chopping heads off and stuff.
Yeah, a little
it's
bit.
Just terrifying. That's terrifying. And then as is the big, again, we see the fat guy, the crazy, like, no-necked fat blob dude.
Yeah. Which
I don't even know what to refer to him as.
He looks, there's a character named Mojo from the comics that people are speculating, like, you know.
Yeah, I see pictures of Mojo. I've looked up pictures of Mojo based on that connection, and I can get where they're going with that.
Yeah, I mean, Mojo has all the dreadlocks. He's in, like, a mechanical thing with spider legs, but he has this whole, like, universe, like this, that he brings people to. You know, so who knows? I mean, it's feasible, but I also think it might just be one of his inner personalities. But at the same time, you know, it looks fucking weird.
It does. But I like that. It adds to the level of like craziness of what's actually going on inside his head. And it's like there's all this crazy stuff going on inside his head that he keeps witnessing that no one else gets the opportunity to see.
Sure.
And so it just further drives him into thinking like, no, I'm crazy because great, I can read minds and that's neat. But
yeah.
But I also see this crazy fat dude, and like, does no one else see this crazy fat guy? You know, so like he's definitely crazy.
I do love the whole time he's in the MRI, and that dude just has like the zaniest 70s technology. He's typing on keyboards, he's turning dials. It's kind of like
Irvine character.
Yeah, it's very much like
Irwin.
You know, Frankenstein's lab, but like more modern. I also love how he's talking to someone. He's like, "Who are you talking to?" He's like, "Carrie." And then eventually you see Carrie, and I watch everything with subtitles. One of them is Cary, the other one is Kerry.
Oh, okay, clever.
Yeah, which I don't know if, I mean, maybe they just get it from like the IMDb credits or something, but yeah, it's like a real person in there, but he only, I mean, she's that real girl that we've seen in there already, right?
Yes, yeah.
So it is just a real person back there he's talking to, but it just adds into the paranoia that he's like, you're not talking to yourself? No, Carrie. But that guy's so like high-strung and wired and focused on the work, he can't coherently just express in a sentence that there's another person in the room named Carrie.
Right. You know? He's not concerned about what this guy in the MRI machine is thinking. He's just saying words, and then when it confuses David, he's just like, whatever. No, there's another person in here. Yeah.
I love how he gets that crazy reading, too, and he just turns everything off and runs away.
He's like, did you just leave?
Yeah. He's just
it's funny.
stuck in there.
That's where we begin to also explore more of David's power set, because what we've gotten from episode 1 was that he heard a lot of voices, but what those voices were, we didn't quite understand. We knew that he could move things with his mind if he was angry enough. And that's kind of what we knew about his like powers, right? And that he saw people. He would see people that didn't exist.
Sure.
Potentially people from his past. But now we're also seeing that he has the ability to
turn a giant dial on a radio
and turn down the voices of everyone so he can specifically read a mind.
I love that they had like this just giant oversized audio like preamp, and he's just turning a giant volume knob, and it's just so clearly prop looking. It was great.
It is, but it lends itself to this idea that they want you to watch basically two shows. They want you to watch the show of what's really happening and the show of what's going on in David's mind, right? So
kind of like the '60s dance number, like last episode.
Yes, exactly. And so where most shows might just say, you know, she describes to him, I want you to imagine you're turning down a giant dial and everyone else's voice is getting slower or lower, but one voice is standing out. You know, you would just watch him visualize that. But this actually, you go there. Like we go in his mind to the giant dial that he's turning down. So that's really interesting. And then also he had the ability to like almost displace himself, right? And put himself where his sister was. And then also like actually impact physical space wherever he did that to. Because she heard him in the hall when he was calling her name, right? So like he has the ability to somehow in his mind go to other places and see what's happening outside of where he is.
Yeah, because now the hospital has no record of him or his doctor, and the Eye basically has her in captivity. So he's being invaded.
Yep. Now the hospital has no record of him or her friend, his friend. What's her name? Blind girl can't touch a girl. Ascot.
Yeah. Sid.
Yeah, Sid.
And then
so no record of her either.
Yeah, so there's no record of any of those people. She's now in captivity. He wants to go rescue her because he kind of hears her, but you know, Sid's like, might as well get your powers under control. Like they're not going to kill her because she's the bait.
Right.
To which case he's like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. And then in the end, instead of leaving. Which it looks like he's free to leave the school if he would like. Like there wasn't a lot of resistance with him leaving. So I wondered for a while, like, okay, I know traditionally X-Men, like Professor X's school is like a good place to be. You trust it, but I don't know this woman. I don't know this girl who's running a school here. Maybe like she's actually bad in some way, and we just haven't revealed that yet.
Yeah, it could very much be like the Weapon X program.
Yeah, exactly. And so she's collecting them all, but then keeping them there. And if he tried to leave, he would be met with some resistance. Like, no, you can't leave. You have to stay here. And he definitely was kind of pressured to stay, but it was by Sid. So it felt like he had the free will to leave where he was going, but he chose to stay.
Sure.
So that's good. It's good level setting. It's good like scene setting, I think.
How many episodes in do you think it is going to be before him and Sid just like watch each other jerk off?
Because that's the only way. See, that's the first line in my tweet. This is two lovebirds who can't have sex.
I know. They're having a romance of the mind instead.
I think I heard that, and I was like, oh, that's okay. All right, I guess that's a sweet way of putting something that's kind of sad.
yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
Anyway, I imagine this is on FX. It's edgy. We're gonna get that scene at some point.
Yes, something like that. So, something that implies that they're getting physical without actually getting physical.
Yeah. Let's get physical. Well, is there anything else you would like to go over for this fine episode of Legion?
No, not much. I love the direction that it's again, like my big thought, and when I was like recapping in my mind, I think my big takeaway from this was like the two shows, and then kind of I said that earlier, and I was going to say that at the end, like the two shows that you're watching, the show inside his mind and the show of what's actually happening in reality. And when you think about it that way, it begins to allow each scene to make sense a little bit more, because you ask yourself, is this David or is this real? You know?
Sure.
And I'm sort of watching it with that filter a little bit. But then there's also these crazy moments, and I love, you know, like when time just literally skips and you go, okay, I no longer know. I could be in the real world, or I could be in David's mind, and I just don't know anymore. So I think this was
they definitely give you enough, like you're starting to see the breakdown of which side's which, but they also make sure you have enough scenes to where you're just questioning everything still.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? Yeah.
Yep. And
cool.
so it leaves enough mystery that it drives me very much to watch the next episode. So I'm into this. I'm bought in.
I am as well. I'm really enjoying it. It's a lot of fun. It's a very unique take on a superhero story. And I'm just excited to see where it goes. It's also just not predictable at all, so that's always enjoyable. You know. So cool. You ready to put a bow on this bitch?
Let's do it.
Now you say we'll see you next time, little buddies.
Oh well, we will see you. Well, you'll hear us next time, little buddies, and we'll see you on the interwebs, on all the social medias. We'll see you next time, little buddies.
Flawless.
I don't do that. I haven't done that in months. I forgot. That's what a bow on that bitch looks like. That was the best bitch bow I've ever done.